Hello, residents of St. Albert. It's Tracy With here from Y Station, here to present the results of the 2019 Community Engagement Survey. So the study background this year, as in many years for 2019, was to measure overall quality of life with citizens in the city of St. Albert, safety issues, perceptions of overall satisfaction with city services, facilities, and programs, service expectations, property tax and financial planning, perceptions of municipal leadership, as well as address or assess some of the top priorities for the city of St. Albert. Our survey this year was implemented from November 14th to December 11th, 2019. We had a number of opportunities where residents could participate, including the general population survey, which was a combination of telephone and web-based surveys. 453 residents participated in this way. A mail to web survey, so 5,000 households were randomly selected in the city of St. Albert. 603 of those households participated in the survey opportunity. As well, a public-based or open survey or open link was provided to the municipality, to the city, and 283 additional residents participated in the survey using that method. The results we're going to review today are really based on the general public survey or the general population survey. These results are reflective and weighted to match the population distribution for the city and provide the clearest picture and the most representative picture of results. As well, we are providing a municipal comparison this year where we are benchmarking the city of St. Albert against other municipalities in the province. It is important to note here, though, that the results for the city of St. Albert would have been the most recent, having been completed at the end of 2019. Some of the municipalities that we're comparing to would have data that we're using from 2017 or 2018 or even earlier in 2019. These results aren't always as comparative because these are point-in-time surveys. The data would be reflective of some of the changes in the community that has occurred in a very busy 2019, including both a provincial election and a federal election where a lot of issues came to the forefront. All of those issues would be reflected in the City of St. Albert findings, but not necessarily in some of those comparators that were conducted earlier. Overall quality of life is our first question. Here we see, again, very high measures of overall quality of life, with 98% providing a good or very good rating. Very few, 2% or less, would have provided a rating of other than good or very good. When we look municipally in terms of comparisons, the city of St. Albert has the highest percentage at 98%, though still relatively comparable to our other communities, including Leduc, Airdrie, Red Deer, Grand Prairie. Factors that contribute to the high quality of life in the city of St. Albert include the park and system and trails, the community atmosphere, friendly people, being a safe place to live and lower crime rates, availability of services, festivals, and citizen services, as well as solid shopping, amenities, entertainment, and restaurants. When we look at factors, though, that might detract from a higher quality of life in St. Albert, tax is the top issue that's mentioned. So 36% mentioned the high tax rate. Traffic came to the forefront again in 2019. So traffic volume and congestion were mentioned by 27%. And again, these comments on these types of questions are open-ended, which means that folks give us their comments. We then try to categorize those. So this is not a prompted list. These are the items that are coming forth from residents. Community safety, again, the city of St. Albert, very high with a mean of 4.41 out of 5. We have over 90% that agree that the city of St. Albert is a safe place to live. Very few giving us ratings of 1 or 2 or disagreement on this particular item. When we look comparatively at the other municipalities, again, the city of St. Albert very high at 92% when we look at the ratings of 4 or 5 out of 5. What are the issues that are of the biggest concern? Theft and burglary have continued to climb, which we do see in times of economic hardship. We do see concerns. Theft, burglary, property crime tends to be the target. We actually see it a little higher in some of our rural communities, but at 46%, that was the biggest concern. Vandalism at 23%, but drugs in the community have been mentioned less often as being an issue in the city of St. Albert, dropping to 13% in 2019. Overall satisfaction, so this is the question where we ask about all programs and services provided to residents by the city. Overall satisfaction, we still see very high measures with a mean just under 4.0 out of 5. Again, very high measures, though we did see a bit of a change in terms of the 5 out of 5 rating. When we look comparatively, very important to realize that the City of Red Deer, the timing of their survey as well as the City of Airdrie would have been a little earlier in the year. So there is a point in time issue in terms of comparability, but the City of St. Albert did tend to see a lower score on this particular measure at 75%. When we look at service expectations, still very high expectations in terms of the service being provided, meeting what residents expect to have for items like fire and ambulance at 93%, outdoor recreation at 85%, cultural participation at 83%, policing services and preserving the community heritage both above 80%, and still high measures when we look at indoor recreation, Indigenous culture and history stories, community development, and environmental services. Some of the items where services may not necessarily be meeting expectations as well as they are for our first set of items would be items like FCSS or individual youth and family support services, utilities, bylaw enforcement, which we do have to be careful with because that is the one service where if you interact with staff, you may not necessarily have a higher rating of satisfaction. All other city services, if you interact with staff on those services, you tend to rate them higher or have higher levels of satisfaction or meeting expectation. Public works and roads, a little lower on the scale, though that's quite typical in terms of measures at 56%, planning and development at 49%, public transit at 48%, economic development and engineering. Engineering, though, when we look at those comments, are related to traffic and traffic congestion, so just a bit of context there. When we look at suggestions for improvement on some of the specific services, planning and development, just talk about the overall concern or lack of development service. Transit is the fact that there is limited service or infrequent, that there needs to be more service provided. Economic development, the comments really pointed to a lack of business attraction or that there needs to be a larger or more solid business base in the community. And then again, the comments about engineering were related to traffic and traffic congestion. When we look at housing, a new question in 2019, we did assess this year, is it important for the city to ensure that there's a range of housing options and services to address the gaps between rents, housing prices, and income levels? And with a mean of 3.93 out of 5, residents very clearly are giving an indication to the city that this is an important issue in St. Albert and one that they expect the municipality to participate in. So strong support there for efforts in terms of continuing to ensure there's a range of housing options and services. When we look specifically at expectations, 58% felt that their expectations were being met in terms of housing options availability for different income levels and stages of life, but 42% talked about availability of programs and services to address the gap between rents and income levels. 41% talked about rental housing options for households of different income or stages of life, and lowest on the scale was 31% in terms of supports for those who are at risk of homelessness. When we talk about contact with employees, in the past 12 months, a very consistent measure that 64% or 2/3 of respondents have been in contact with a city employee over the previous 12 months, which is quite a high number considering the size of the city of St. Albert. So very interesting that we're seeing very high numbers of contact with staff. When we look at overall satisfaction, though, with a mean over again of 4 and still maintaining at 4.3 out of 5, very high levels of satisfaction with service when you look at the staff or the city employees. So it really is a tribute to the effort and the commitment that city staff have in terms of meeting expectations with residents of the city. In terms of access to information, a little bit of a lower measure this year in terms of whether or not the city is meeting expectations in terms of sharing and providing access to information on municipal matters that affect them and keep folks informed. There is a higher expectation, particularly with younger residents, that more communication is better or more involvement in municipal matters is better from their perspective. When we look at additional suggestions for what folks are looking for that had mentioned that the shared information was not meeting their expectations, suggestions included more mail or mail outs to households, more ads in the newspaper, direct emails, or use of the city website to promote these opportunities. In terms of in-person service expectations, 82% indicated that service expectations were being met in terms of being able to access service in person at City Hall or at recreation facilities. Perceived value for tax dollar. What this is really telling us is the value that folks are receiving for city services appropriate given what they're paying in terms of tax level. And here we see, again, very consistent findings compared to 2017 and even 2014 when we look at the overall value for tax dollar. In terms of comparisons, though, the city of St. Albert does tend to be on the lower side, though compared to the city of Red Deer more than the other municipalities. Again, quite consistent with previous years and consistent with other municipalities that are comparable in the province. When we look at main reasons why people feel they're receiving good, very good, or excellent value, folks 30% indicate that they're satisfied overall, generally good in terms of what they're expecting to receive. 12% talk about taxes being high and continuing to rise, and 9% really focus on snow removal services and road maintenance at 7%. When we look at those that feel they're receiving poor or fair value, there is a perception that there is overspending or a bit more work can be done to spend responsibly. 24% highlight that taxes are high and continue to rise in St. Albert, and 12% feel that the taxes are higher when compared to other communities in the province. In terms of indications or really which tax strategy residents feel they would have the most support for in the next 5 years, there is less support for an inflationary tax to maintain current levels of service, and a real increase in the it depends category, which is really when we look at the open ends for that particular category, it's asking folks at the city of St. Albert to do more with less. So it's really maintain the service level at the current tax level, which is a very difficult thing to ask, but that is what folks are being asked to do at the city. So a bit of a challenge there in terms of maintaining service levels, but not being able to properly fund those and do that. So just a big concern and really asking City Council to be smart in how they're spending over the next 5 years. When we look at municipal leadership, 48% agree that council is acting in the best interest of the community, 45% feel that the council effectively plans for the future of the community, and 46% feel that their interests are being served by council. This combined with an ask or an expectation that there will be more opportunities for involvement is really saying that folks want to be more involved and are really interested in how council is making decisions in their best interest. Overall satisfaction, though, with municipal leadership, really consistent at a 3.5 out of 5, with 14% very satisfied and 42% with a 4 or 5 out of 5. When we look at the top priorities for the city, what do you think should be those top priorities for council? Budget and reducing taxes are the top two mentions, with a fifth of respondents each mentioning each of those comments. Roads, improving infrastructure at 17%, and again, traffic flow and congestion by 11%. Conclusions. Overall, again, the quality of life in the city of St. Albert is high and is consistently high, which is very in line with the city's visions and pillars of sustainability. St. Albert is perceived to be a very safe community, and they do feel that fire and ambulance and policing services are meeting their expectations. So those are some important things to keep in mind. Though some of the overall percentages in terms of whether those expectations are being met have slid slightly in 2019. So outside of fire, ambulance, policing, and preserving the community heritage, many of the services, those expectations rating went down slightly. The biggest area of focus, though, was economic development and engineering, and specifically related to traffic and traffic flow. In terms of housing options and services, there is a commitment or absolute support for council and administration to stay involved with making sure that affordable housing and supports are provided for those who need those services. And customer service, really one of the best news stories of the survey is that customer service is continued to be maintained by very busy city employees who spend probably 2/3 of in their day, in some cases, speaking with residents, and they're doing a good job of that. So just important to recognize the efforts of city employees and their contribution. This is really just a slide to show the balance of the demographics of the research that we completed. For more information, feel free to email yardstickresearch.com and we can provide some more information on that. That ends our presentation of the 2019 City of St. Albert Resident Survey findings. Thank you for your time. Should you have any additional questions, please contact yardstickresearch.com or the City of St. Albert.